In this fourth chapter of our, in this fourth section of our chapter on culture, we'll look at three major theoretical perspectives that we've learned in previous chapter. The ones that are applied within sociology, right? And we're going to see how these three major perspectives look at culture. How does it integrate culture in our society? So if you still have some questions or about these three major theoretical perspectives in sociology, I encourage you to review our previous lecture on this topic. It's very important that you are well grounded in understanding these three major theoretical perspectives in sociology, so that way moving forward for not only this chapter in culture, but also all the other chapters that we'll cover in the rest of our class, they will all refer to these three major theoretical perspectives within sociology. So these three major theoretical perspectives are functionalism, conflict theory, and SI, or symbolic interactionism theory. So as you may recall, functionalism analyzes society on a macro level, and its focus is on the different parts of society and how they all work together cooperatively. There's trust among the different parts, that each part will do its own function well, so that way the other parts can focus on their own responsibilities or roles, right? So functionalism assumes that different parts of society, they all have different roles, responsibilities, and they work together in our society to function collectively well. Conflict theory, on the other hand, emphasizes inequality, conflict within our society. So it also holds a macro perspective, so looking at institutions or groups level. Looking at how institutions, for example, perpetuate inequality, or group dynamics, right? Or who gets to be friend with who, right? How that perpetuate inequality in our society. And the way in which society is structured is so that way the privilege remained on top. So that, again, conflict theory emphasizes conflict within society among different groups or institutions. SI, symbolic interactionism, on the other hand, focuses on a micro level, meaning individual behavior, how they live. In particular, SI focuses on the symbols and the meanings that are attached to them, and are conveyed in social interactions. So when applying these three theories to culture, you would also use those words, those keywords or focus of these theories in order to understand culture. So let's start with functionalism. Again, function has the word function, so emphasizes function of our society working together. So in application to culture, function would say something like this, that it would say society needs culture to exist. Culture has many functions, such as norms and values that enable society to work together and meet its needs, such as, for example, cultural norms enables us to exist together as a community, as a group, and our behaviors are predictable, right? Because that's why they're norms, and norms are based on values. Values are something that we shared as a group, and that we trust each other, that we would adhere to these values as we, function, as we work in our society, contribute to our society. So again, functionalism, right, emphasizes the functional aspect of culture in order for society to exist. Conflict theory, on the other hand, right, argues that dominant culture reinforces inequality. So that means that the culture of the elite, right, reinforces inequality in our society, so that way those on top, the privileged group, will all continue to benefit, continue to expand its privileges, and so on. So one way to think about this is, let's say, look at our educational curriculum, right? Let's say you take art or art history, which is, art, I think, is so important for our society in so many ways, because it not only expresses the society in the moment, but also the past, right? But if you take a class in art or history, especially the introductory classes, right, there's a strong emphasis on the art culture of the elite, right? Like Italian, art, Renaissance, right? Cezanne in France, right? Monet, and the list go on and on. So these are, cultural, elements of, or high culture, which is a term we learned from the previous section, right? This is high culture belonging to the elite that not all of us have access to. Like, how many of us actually have the chance to go to the Louvre in order to, see and witness the Mona Lisa, right? Very, very few of us, right? So conflict theory, right? So again, what we learn in school, right, is a elite culture, and so it reinforces the fact that as if the elite culture is the one that we should study and know, right? And what about our own culture? Let's say Sacramento art, right? What about that, right? How come it doesn't have the space within, a classroom or within an educational curriculum, right, for us to talk about the art that many of us have access to, right? Sacramento art, graffiti art, and so on. So SI, they emphasize symbols and meanings attached to the symbols. SI, the way they would see culture is that culture is dynamic and fluid, so its meanings are subjective and constantly changing. So tattoos, for example, right, historically, tattoos might be seen as kind of rebellious and deviant, right? And now I don't think tattoos have such connotation anymore. Now perhaps it's like seen as an expression of a cultural expression, or that tattoo carries certain individual significant meanings to the person who has that tattoo, for example. But historically it's seen as it's quite bad, right, in our society. So again, SI emphasizes the meanings, right, that are attached to cultural elements and how they change over time. So that concludes our section 4. And again, if this chart is new and difficult for you, I encourage you to review our lectures and readings on these 3 theoretical perspectives within sociology.